Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Rob, and thank you to the Quiet Hollers. Remember to check out their music at quiethollers.com. Greetings and salutations, all you Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is indeed the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Farrell, I apologize for the audio snafu. It is totally on my end, but the real question that everybody's wondering, how was the commissioner's Thanksgiving?
You know, it was great, Balky. Thank you very much. And, yeah, we compromised the system by the massive statistical need to review the scoring of Raider kicker Daniel Carlson. So, you know, there's understanding that some of our electronics might not be working. But, hey, no, it was great. It was one of the best days I've had in this house in a couple of years, and a wonderful family that I have to thank for that. And it was just a terrific day of football. I heard from fantasy players, former clients, current clients, kids in college, and people, you know, even from I had a guy call in from London, and a dear friend, a lovely girl, call in from France. And people recognize that, you know, the football and family and that day is just very, very meaningful here. So thank you for asking. It was great. And I could tell by looking at the posting on Facebook that the Balkman crew was ready for their own sort of brand of football in the front yard.
Yeah, that was fun. And I'll tell you this, and as long as you're going to give me the opportunity to brag, I'm going to. This is the first time we had the opportunity to participate. It was my son, who is in second grade, and 6-7 of his buddies. I can't remember exactly how many were there. And their fathers, myself included, we got together early on Thanksgiving morning for a little turkey bowl, two-hand football action. And now, when I played in high school, I played both ways, but primarily I was a corner. And fittingly enough, my team was seemingly always on defense in this Thanksgiving game. And I was started off in man coverage, and then we switched to zone, and I kind of baited the quarterback deep in the game to throw it to my son in the end zone. And I had a split second to think about it. I'm like, do I let my son potentially catch a game-winning touchdown, or do I go for it all? Well, instinct took over. I jumped the route, pick six to end the game for yours truly. My son thought it was awesome, but I do feel a little bit bad about not letting him have the opportunity to catch the game-winning touchdown, but that'll come. Instinct took over. What can I say?
A complete year of living in guilt is what you're now facing. And there's another one thing that I think I think Uncle Leroy should anchor the defensive line in this event next year. So I would make sure that Leroy is with you for this.
Yeah, well. I mean, if his knees can hold up, can't nobody block that dude. He will be a terror for the quarterback that he's facing. So I totally agree on that. That was how my Thanksgiving went. I'm glad to hear yours went well. Hopefully all the listeners went well as well. And we have a great show for you tonight. We're going to rap about whether Cole Kmet is an every week start in FFPC leagues. We're going to talk about whether J.D. McKissick is getting enough action to be in your lineups this weekend. And then the ninth place team owner in the Footballguys Players Championship, Matt Bredin, is going to make an appearance to talk about the Ravens backfield, the philosophy of stockpiling running backs, and much more. Shout out to the chat room right now. Feel free to post any questions you might have in there. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, we are at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. Of course, Farrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship is at KFFSC.com. Please post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/HSFF Hour. And if you want to give us a call, 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OBA. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you do have any questions for us, send them in now. We're going to try to get to all the chat room questions, all the tweets, all the emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up at the end of the show today. Our thanks to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and our producer and mutual friend Rob. Farrell, let's get to it here tonight. Number one, was there ever any doubt that your Raiders were going to pull that game out at Jerry World in Dallas yesterday?
Fascinating game, and yeah, it was in doubt. But the Raiders, I think the theme around football is the bounce-back performance for a lot of teams that look like they can't get it together, look like the whole season has passed them by, and all of a sudden it doesn't matter if they're on the road. All three road teams won Thursday. It doesn't matter where you're playing football. It just seems to matter what the guys in the locker room decide that they're going to do and what the coaches scheme up for them. The Raiders came ready to make trying to make the Cowboys throw the ball, and despite their problems in the secondary with the consistent pass interference calls, they managed to figure out a way to win that game.
It was exciting. It was the game of the day. I thought that was going to be the most exciting game of the day, and it turned out to be as much. It's tough to say that Bears-Lions game went down to the final snap, but it was not nearly as exciting as that Cowboys-Raiders game. Okay, let's talk about, number one, by the way, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, brand new once again this week. Craig Bodenmiller, the 43rd place team in the FFPC main event, was this week's guest. You can check that out at rotoviz.com/podcast. Good stuff from Craig there. Little mid-year dynasty insight from Craig on that, considering how many dynasty teams he plays. That was a lot of fun, and check that out, rotoviz.com/podcast. All right. Talked about the Cowboys-Raiders. Let's continue the conversation. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network says the Cowboys may alter Ezekiel Elliott's usage while he is trying to get healthy from that bruised knee. According to Rappaport, that knee injury could be with Elliott all season if the team does not give him ample rest. Ezekiel Elliott, 9 carries, 25 yards, and a touchdown. He did catch 6 passes for 24 yards. So that definitely helped you out in the FFPC as well as the KFFSC.
Yes, sir.
His backup, Tony Pollard, 14 touches for 68 yards, also getting that 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. We've had people come on this show, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, telling you for almost 2 years now that Tony Pollard looks like the more explosive running back in that offense with Dallas. And if this is the case, Rappaport was saying that Dallas could, quote, flip the roles a little bit between Elliott and Pollard. So this is interesting, Farrell. I don't think anybody who drafted Elliott, as long as he's active, is going to sit him. But Tony Pollard, is he creeping up into the top 20 running back territory for you right now?
Well, yes, and I don't have him anywhere, and the people that do have him, this is the magic moment that they've waited for, Balky. It's not a question of whether this becomes a flex player. This becomes their starting running back because they're not going to miss the opportunity, anyone that's drafted Pollard, to get him in the lineup. And I saw a later report today. You might mention how much validity it perhaps has, but there's even conversation now of Ezekiel going on injury reserve for 3 days, 3 games. So it's a situation that we could go at this story from many different ways. I think the way that I want to go at it is I want to remind everyone of one thing. It is easier to be a complimentary player. It is easy to sub in for the guy and make your statement in subbing for him rather than being the guy. And that's what Tony Pollard's going to ask if Zeke is on the sidelines for any of these games. You're attacking it from the idea that the roles may change. Which is very difficult to assign how that's going to look. But let's say the roles flip. Let's just stay with it like that. Let's say Zeke is not on the IR. Balky, when you come to Zeke, you're talking about a guy that's twice hit 70 snaps this year. His average is 55. Many times he's in the 60s. Tony has never hit 30. Pollard has never hit 30 snaps in a game. And sure, he looks explosive because he's not asked to do a whole lot in the game except go in and look explosive. I'm not so sure how he's going to handle that blocking assignments with this team, and people might roll their eyes at that because I think our fantasy players are expecting him to come out and be the number one back, do all the things that's necessary for him to do, and still be this kind of explosive, pass-catching, complementary player. And you can't be both. No one can be both in this league. And so I would temper my expectations for what I would expect Pollard to do given an expanded role. Would he be as good as Zeke? Perhaps, but I doubt it. Would he be as good around the goal line? Can he score the ball? You know, Pollard's had one touchdown this year. 531 yards rushing, one touchdown. We don't know what he can do around the goal line. He's a very good back. He's a very talented player. What does it do to the team? You know, we're not going to see any more touchdown kickoff returns because he won't be doing the job. And then finally, I would look at it like this. New Orleans, it's been difficult for anyone to run against them. That's the team that's on the schedule next. If you watched Dak throw the ball in trying to connect with these receivers, the second group of wide receivers who played very, very well, especially Gallup, you could see that Dak had some problems. And so I would, if I was trying to scheme defense, I would try to make it Dallas throw the ball against my defense. And he's going after New Orleans. He's got Washington twice and the New York Giants once. So there's some defenses that you can run the ball against. Perhaps that figures into this decision. And I guess the last thing I would say about it, we watched CeeDee Lamb, who probably, I have a sneaking suspicion, could have played and might have played if you didn't have such a substantive lead in the division for the Cowboys. Cowboys are going to win this division. They're going to hang on and win it, and they're going to win it by a couple games. I think that's what they're trying to do. They're looking at these fresh-legged running backs that are coming in back after some time off. They're impressive, and I think that's the script that they're trying to write for Ezekiel. So that's about all I can say about that, and that's probably too much, but I like Pollard. I'm looking forward to see what he can do, but we've got a guy that's making $850,000 replacing a player that's on a $90 million contract, and I don't think the Cowboys believe he can replace him with the same production.
Good knowledge there, for sure. And remember, the Cowboys and Saints, fresh off their Thanksgiving game, they play again next Thursday night on Thursday Night Football. So it will be interesting. This will be the last time we get the chance to talk to you guys here on this program regarding the Cowboys and Saints game next week, because it will have already taken place by the next time we air again. So I think the thing to me is, for high-stakes owners, if Elliott is active, I own Elliott in a ton of leagues, 7 or 8 leagues probably. It's going to be very, very difficult for me to sit him. If he's active and they're saying he's going to play significantly, I still would give some credence to Tony Pollard as a flex option this week. And Farrell, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that sort of how you're reading it as well? When next week comes around, would Pollard be a flex for you?
If you've got them both, play them both. I give some credence to this idea of putting Zeke on IR, because I don't think you can keep this player on the sidelines. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you take him out of this role. If he's hurting, he's hurting. The rules now allow for a 3-game IR, and that's truly what I would do with him if I wasn't going to play him very, very close to his role. So,
all right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on and talk about Cam Newton here for a second as far as how it relates to DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. Matt Rule says there's, quote, no issues with Cam Newton's arm strength. This was a report in The Athletic we saw this past week. Now, remember, Cam Newton's had more than one shoulder surgery on his throwing shoulder in the last few years. He normally would be able to bomb the ball downfield, no problem. Think about Steve Smith and originally DJ Moore, right, in his rookie year. But this past week, 21 to 26, 189 yards. That's 7.26 yards per attempt in Week 11 against the football team. But only one of those passes came for more than 19 yards. Matt Rule said this was part of Joe Brady's offensive game plan this game, that he historically this season has been an underneath guy, and that's the way that they have been attacking teams. But Rule did say they want to push the ball downfield. He doesn't want to put it on Cam Newton. And I guess we're kind of at a standstill right now. I think Cam Newton makes a pretty good start this week. But as far as DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, Farrell, how do you see this Cam Newton throwing strength situation affect them? Is this a non-story, or is this something to be concerned about if you're trotting these guys out there?
I think it's a very real story, especially if you're in the DJ Moore business. And after seeing the type of passing attack that they used against Washington Football Club, who I think is 27th defending the pass, and you come out with your DJ Moore with 5 catches on 50 yards, and it looks to me like the slant route is basically the only thing that he's got going with Newton. So that may be expanded on, but yeah, I question a lot of what's going on here. If I'm a defender working in the coaching side, I'm going to come with my defense. I'm going to try to cause chaos for Moore. I'm going to push him around a little bit. I'm going to bracket him a little bit. I'm going to make him uncomfortable in the game and make Newton throw the ball to someone else. I see a lot of checkdowns coming to McCaffrey now, and, that's no big news. He's caught 21 passes in the last 3 games, and I expect that to continue. Or could suffer if you don't sometimes try to target him down the field. It could be a very frustrating time for DJ Moore owners.
Let's talk about a not very frustrating time, which is the time of this portion of the show where we bring in our high-stakes expert, our high-stakes guest. And this week we have a good one here, and I think we have him on the line right now. He's a 38-year-old Canadian who works for Veterans Affairs Canada, started with Yahoo Fantasy Baseball, Farrell, in 2004
Wow.
just because his friends needed an extra player. He started winning that league, started doing more cash leagues in 2006, went from $25 buy-ins to $100 buy-ins to high stakes with the NFBC and NFFC back in 2015. Didn't come off great in baseball in 2015, but had a huge NFFC season, winning their 2015 online championship overall. 2016 and 2017 kind of took his lumps more in the high-stakes game. But 2018, very profitable year, the first year he played in the FFPC. 2019, again, a little bit of regression to the mean, but 2020, the NFBC Sprint Online Championship, which featured 1,000 teams, and 9th place overall in the Footballguys Players Championship heading into this week, Week 12. Please welcome into the show Matt Bredin. Matt, thank you so much for making some time for us tonight, and a belated Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Oh, thank you. You as well. Thanks for the kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to be talking with you.
Just curiously, it sounded like you started off as a baseball guy. What turned you on to football?
Just playing with the same guys I was playing fantasy baseball with. They needed a guy for the football league, and I think it was 2007 was my first year playing fantasy football. I still remember my first round pick was Rudy Johnson off the Bengals.
Yeah.
And he got me off to a good start.
So that number one, that's fantastic. I can't even remember. I started playing fantasy football in 94, I want to say, and I could not tell you. So many people have come on the show, they remember their first round pick, and I honestly don't remember. What's funny is former co-host of the show, Dave the Dizzle Gerzak, I know his first round pick ever was Terrell Davis back in the late 90s. I don't even know my own, which is so funny about that I know his and not. But in any event, before we get into the fantasy football segment of the show, Matt, I want to congratulate you on getting into the top 10 of the Footballguys Players Championship after 11 weeks of play. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing for Veterans Affairs Canada?
Yeah, sure. I work for Veterans Affairs Canada. Like you said, I work for the Access to Information Department. We deal with all our veterans up here as well as our RCMP veterans. So they send requests over. They have different types of requests I deal with. And, it's an honor to be servicing those folks. I've got a great amount of admiration for them. And my boss is a veteran as well, so I get to work with one. So, I really enjoy that part about the job.
That is terrific, Matt. Where do you live?
I live in Cornwall, Prince Edward Island in the Maritimes. Have you ever heard of Prince Edward Island or ever been?
Yes. I've never been, but yes, I've heard. But maybe you should illuminate some of our listeners.
Okay, population is less than 150,000. You got to take a bridge. Used to be a ferry, but we have a bridge that we built in the late 90s. It's a beautiful spot in the summer. It's like a lot of Canada. We get a lot of winter up here, but I like it. Can't complain. I love America as well, but Canada is a pretty good country as well.
You are in a very relaxed attitude to enjoy. I can see you just sitting out in the Maritimes enjoying your baseball and watching your teams just move up. So congratulations with your football team. And for Balky, and for a lot of us forget, but when do the Canadians actually celebrate Thanksgiving?
It's in October. It's
there you go, Balky. So that's a very belated. You gave him a belated happy Thanksgiving, but it's a very belated happy.
You guys do it right. You guys do it right down there. You guys, yeah, we should wait till you guys do it and just try to do it at the same time you do it, I think.
Well, Matt, you know what I would do if I were you? I mean, I don't think there's any question. If I live in Canada, I'd be celebrating it in October and November. I'd be doing it twice for sure.
I am for sure. I had the games on yesterday. I was working for a little bit of it, but yeah, the games were on. I was enjoying Thanksgiving anyways.
Hey, you've enjoyed one thing in I want to get right into some football commentary. You have really enjoyed quarterback Philadelphia Eagles Jalen Hurts, and I'm beginning to enjoy watching the games because it was such a polarizing, ugly start as an NFL quarterback, but it never was ugly in the fantasy points he's putting up. Now they seem to have intersected, and he's playing well, both running the ball and passing the ball, and the fantasy numbers have stayed consistent, so consistent that he's righted with Brady and Mahomes right in scoring fantasy points at the quarterback position. So I got a couple questions for you. Is this the kind of season that you anticipated from this player? Did you go in to say, I want Jalen Hurts, or were you saying, I really want a dual threat quarterback? Because I had a lot of guys that said, you know, they take Hurts, they take Tannehill. Some of them, God forbid, were even taking Trey Lance. How did you end up with Hurts as often as you did, and what do you see forthcoming for him for the balance of the season?
Well, I went into every draft, and I wanted two guys. I wanted Jalen Hurts and Trey Lance, and Trey Lance hasn't worked out so well. Still holding out hope that he gets a couple starts and just to see what he looks like, really. Mm-hmm. But I wanted Jalen Hurts in more leagues, and I ended up with him. I did 3 FFPCs. I know quarterbacks go a little bit later. The first one, I got sniped on him. And the second one, Lamar Jackson fell to me in the 8th round, so I didn't get a chance to take him in that one. So I was pleased to get Hurts in the third FPC because he was definitely a guy I had attention for in every draft. I felt, you know, a lot of people did. He kind of reminded us of Lamar Jackson 2 years ago. And there was some talk in the preseason about him maybe not being named the starting QB. I think that kind of held his price in check, and there was a little bit of negative talk that was going on. I have a question for you guys. Did the Eagles now, with their 3 first-round picks, looks like they're going to have if the Colts end up giving Wentz 75% of the snaps, which looks like it's going to be the case, do they take a quarterback with one of those first-round picks, or do they just build around Jalen Hurts? Because that's looking more and more like an option, isn't it?
Balky, you got insight on that one?
Well, I don't have any insight. I can tell you what my gut tells me, and then I'll kick it over to you. You probably have more insight than me. For me, what I'm seeing with Hurts and what I'm seeing from this Eagles team, I would think that they would use those first-round picks to build around Hurts and build up that defense, because I think they got a pretty good one in Jalen Hurts right now. I know at the start of the season they weren't sold on him. Even, a month into the season, it sounded like they still weren't sold on him. But I think if I'm part of the Eagles brass, I've seen enough. I'd rather use those assets elsewhere. What do you think?
All the college quarterbacks so far, and there may be some emerge. Senior Bowl, one of my favorite weeks of the year, even more so than the Combine. I think that's where a lot of quarterbacks emerge. But a lot of this group looks to me to be a bunch of Mike White's, a player we're all familiar with, a guy you can get in the middle round and play. That's kind of what this entire draft class looks like to me. And so I'm very comfortable if I'm in the Eagles front office of saying, look, we made a good decision. We've got our quarterback.
Matt, do you have in Prince Edward Island? Do you have a favorite NFL team? Do you root for any team up there?
I'm a Russell Wilson fan, so I kind of cheer for Seattle, which is kind of not very much fun recently, and I think it's going to end soon because I think he's going to be going somewhere else pretty soon. I was a Chargers fan before him because I was a huge LaDainian Tomlinson fan, but just kind of follow players, really. So I followed the Chargers when LT was in his heyday, and then I kind of switched to the Seahawks when Beast Mode and Russell Wilson, and that's kind of who I still half-heartedly cheer for, but just follow players, really.
Well, one of the players I'm sure you're following is Laviska Shenault, given that you have him starting for you at a flex spot in your 9th place overall Football Guys team right now. And that's over Damian Harris. Damian Harris, who you have on the bench currently, who is playing the Titans this week. Just kind of curious, how did you come to that decision, Shenault over Harris? I mean, did the Jamal Agnew injury factor into that at all? And do you think it's likely to change before 1 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday?
Yeah, the Agnew injury is the key thing. I'm hoping, and the real key is if they put him in the slot, which is I'm probably gonna have to wait till Sunday to find out if they do. Damian Harris is a little less exciting to me with the emergence of Randre Stevenson, and I'm just a little uncertain how that's gonna work out. He'll probably get his touchdown and he'll be a safe play, but I'm intrigued by Shenault this week. It's still something I might go down to the wire on, but as of now, yeah, I'm leaning towards Shenault. I like the matchup against the Falcons. I think they got to get some points at some point. There'll be some points scored in that game, I think, and I think Shenault has got as good a chance as any to catch 7 or 8 passes. And that's a little more exciting to me than what I think Damian Harris will do, which is probably split the carries with Stevenson and maybe get a touchdown and 60, 70 yards or something like that.
Can I just real quick kind of follow up, Farrell, before you ask, just real quick kind of follow up, and Kern Reeves bringing this up in the chat right now. Randre Stevenson was actually added to the Patriots injury report on Wednesday. He's officially listed as questionable. If you look at that game, Matt, and you find out that Stevenson is indeed inactive, is Harris the slam dunk start over Shenault at that point?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, like I don't really set my lineups at this point of the week, so I would factor that in for sure. Right now, if Stevenson is playing, that's like I said, I'd be leaning towards Shenault. But if Stevenson sits out, I probably will just feel safer about Harris, and at that point, I think they're going to probably easily beat the Titans, and they'll probably be running the ball a lot either way. So you could argue that Harris is a safer play, even if Stevenson does play, because he's a good chance to get a touchdown in a game like that. But I'm just a little intrigued by Shenault. If you look at my draft, I reached for Shenault. I took him over some pretty good players. I was just looking at my draft results and looking at some of my bad decisions. One of them was taking Shenault when Jamar Chase was still on the board, as I'm sure would pop out off the board to anybody. I reminded every time I look at a draft board, all the bad choices I made just jump off the board to me. Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard not to. I never look at the good picks. It's always the bad ones that just jump off the board.
Oh, Balky, that is.
So I feel like Shenault owes me. We'll see.
Hudson Kern-Reeve is always on top of the news. Thank God for Hud. He's the best. It doesn't surprise me. I knew before Balky asked you that question. I mean, as soon as I heard the 2 players leave his lips, I knew immediately who you would pick. You were going to pick a wide receiver that looks like a running back, because in looking over your ninth place overall team, you chose 8 running backs. I mean, and then you chose Chenault, who's built like a running back, to play wide receiver. The success that I've had this year, it's been kind of what I call my heavy teams. Extra tight ends, usually an elite one or one who's knocking on the door of being elite, maybe as many as 3 of them, at least 6 running backs. And it's been by design, not by accident. It's not like the running backs fell to me. But I never had a roster where I had 8 running backs. And I'm curious, is that something that you went in, you had your quarterbacks that you wanted, and you knew you could get them later. Is the 8 running back idea something that you embraced and you said, look, I'm going to go heavy and I'm going to have these guys and I'm going to go forward with making the decision of which 4 to start every week, and I'm going to have great depth? How did you arrive with 8 running backs of all things?
Well, I just had a tension after the RB2s that I wanted slipped, and I had to wait till round 6 to get Damian Harris. And I kind of view still Damian Harris as a guy I don't really want to start. Ideally, I'd have an injury to a Dalvin Cook and be able to start Alexander Madison, or I'd be able to start even Devontae Booker if Saquon's out. Or now that Zeke's banged up, I can maybe play Tony Pollard. Those guys are just more exciting to me than Damian Harris. So I like having guys like that on my bench where they can really help out big time for maybe 2 or 3 weeks a season. And so I've got 8 of them. I'm going to have to drop one of them going into the playoffs for just some backups.
It's going to hurt
you. Drop at least one of them.
It's going to hurt you, Daryl. I know.
Yeah, I'll have to go down to 7. But I didn't like Damian Harris. I liked my wide receivers, and I liked having Pitts, and I figured I'd be able to figure out the quarterbacks. But I just I like to have a lot of running backs when I'm not really comfortable with the second guy I'm putting in each week.
We are talking with the 9th place team owner in the Football Guys Players Championship heading into Week 12 here on the HSF at Power. It is indeed Matt Bredin, along with myself, Eric Balkman, and Farrell Elliott. Let's kick things over to the chat room because Kern Reeve has had a ton of good questions in there, and I told him we'd get to them, and now we are going to get to them as many as we can right now. So the first one that we're going to lead off with is indeed I want to skip. We're going to get to the Packers question in a little bit, but he wants to know, Matt, what can we expect from Dontrell Hilliard this week as far as fantasy points go? Would he be a good flex for you this week in Football Guys leagues or anything like that for Tennessee, knowing that Adrian Peterson is now on the waiver wire and Hilliard led the Titans in snaps and touches last week?
Yes, he will be, and I can tell you why, because I'm playing against Chad Schroeder in primetime this week, and he's flexing him, so Hilliard's going to go for 18 at least. I was after Hilliard a little bit this past week too. I did get him in one league. I'm not sure if I'm gonna. I probably will flex him just because Schroeder's facing me, and he'll probably pop off against me because of that. I feel you should feel comfortable. If he's playing him, you should feel comfortable playing him.
Yeah, I totally get that. Chad Schroeder, by the way, in Kentucky this past week in one of the leagues I was playing against him in the KFFSC, defeated me by a mere 10 points to earn the 4th seed and the final playoff seed in that main event. Oh, that Chad Schroeder. He is
That's what he does.
Guy it's what he does. It's what he does, and I'm fine with it. It is what it is. We're moving on. All right, another question.
Good thing he's a good guy.
Yeah, and speaking of moving on, let's talk about this, guys. This is a tough question. I'm not sure if I have a good answer for it, despite this being a Green Bay Packers question. But Hudson Kern Reeve wants to know, if you have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, especially if you only have one, given that they play the 4:25 game this week against the Los Angeles Rams, how do you handle them for fantasy? Do you roll the dice and hope Aaron Jones is active? Do you, for sure, is A.J. Dillon a slam dunk start no matter what? Matt, how would you sort of play this, And I guess, to couch it, it kind of depends about what the rest of your team looks like. But what do you think is in store for Jones and Dillon against the Rams in Week 12?
I don't understand why they would play Jones. It doesn't make sense. They get the bye coming up. Dillon's the guy I would prefer if they're both active this week, because I think they'd probably be careful with Jones. So I prefer Dillon either way. And if you have Jones and you don't have a better, safer play, then you're going to play him if he's active. But I didn't draft Jones this year. I do have Dillon, and I'm planning on playing him. And I just don't believe Jones is fully healthy yet, and it doesn't make sense for them to expose him with the bye coming up next week. So we'll see. We'll see if he is healthier than I think he is, but that's kind of where I'd sit on it.
I have said on this show multiple times, I am about 2 Aaron Rodgers passes southeast of Lambeau Field here in northeast Wisconsin. And the Packers are notorious or maybe infamous is a better word, or perhaps it's a good thing. It's a good connotation that they have a very, very cautious medical staff. Originally, sprained MCL for Aaron Jones was expected to knock him out 1 or 2 weeks. This would be bringing him back pretty quick. You've seen the path they've taken with Zadarius Smith, with Jair Alexander, with David Bakhtiari. Would they bring back Aaron Jones for this week, given that they have the bye next week? My inkling says no. Aaron Nagler, who covers the Packers for Cheesehead TV, which is a great Packers at Cheesehead TV, and, of course, cheeseheadtv.com, great place for Packers news. He said today that he would be surprised if Aaron Jones was active tomorrow. And I guess I look back on the Packers' history. I kind of expect Aaron Jones to be inactive as well. I think it's going to be an A.J. Dillon week. The Packers, to me, strike me as a team that believes that, it'd be nice to get the number 1 seed in the playoffs, but they believe they can beat anyone, anywhere, as long as they have Aaron Rodgers healthy, which is what they do right now and which is what they want to do. So I think they are probably going to sit Jones. If I had Aaron Jones and I had a decent option, I'm probably playing him in that 1 o'clock time frame. I'm for sure playing A.J. Dillon. He's locked into my starting lineups for sure. I'm not counting on Aaron Jones as anything more than a desperation play. Farrell, how do you read this situation?
Bucky, I tell you what, there's nothing else that I could legitimately say about this running back situation in Green Bay that you haven't covered splendidly. And you have your hand on the pulse of the Packer moves. And I love that what you said, that Packers can win anywhere and go on a road and do so. This is the benefit. If you got a team like our guest, it's the benefit of having great running backs. You've got a team like the Packers, and Dillon is delivering. Keep him out. It's hard to tell a player not to play in this game, but keep him on the bench and get ready. That's the trend that we're going to see in football. We're going to see with this extra game schedule and the 3-week IR, we're going to see a lot of players whose time is rationed out to them. And I don't think, in this age of player safety, I don't think it's a bad idea. And, Balky, you are 100% correct about that Packers training room and medical staff. You take a player in college that's had any type of injury history, he falls completely off the board as a potential Packer. Those guys got to show up with a very, very clean slate to even get in the building as a draft pick.
And the Packers cannot get out from that Aaron Jones contract until the end of next year. They know they need to count on him in 2022 as well. So I do believe they will be on the cautious side here. Matt, as we move from the running back position to the receiver position, I can't remember if you have Tyler Boyd on this 9th place team. I know you got him in a couple of spots right now in the Footballguys Players Championship. Would you recommend Tyler Boyd as a second flex in the FFPC to other players, even if Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are both healthy, or would you only look to start him if one of those players is inactive for a Bengals game?
No, I've moved on. I like Tyler Boyd coming into the year. I thought they would play at a quicker pace than they played, and I thought they would throw the ball more. I thought he was a pretty good value where he was going. I don't have him in this team. I do have him in one of my FFPC teams, maybe 2 of them actually. I think he fell cheaper in the FFPC than he was in the other contests I play with. But I've moved on from Tyler Boyd. I don't have him starting for me in any of the teams I have him, and he was one of my worst picks coming into the year.
And I'm with you, Matt. I don't think there's a better receiver who's a worse fantasy player to possibly have than Tyler Boyd. Very good footballer. Terrible fantasy year. My question I wanted is in importance, it's a little less now because of what we've learned from Darren Waller. It's not a significant knee injury. It's an IT band sprain, which probably means that he just needs some rest. But I'm going to talk about it anyway because my favorite waiver wire play that I made this year was in Week 7, my Sunday morning miracle, where I moved aggressively to grab Foster Moreau and put him in lineups and was rewarded with 21 points. Nice. From the LSU tight end. Very familiar here in Kentucky with all these SEC players, and I could never remember him doing anything at LSU but catching the ball when they threw it to him and finding the end zone, and he did it when he got a chance to play. This is a player that with the health of, you say you can't take these elite tight ends and handcuff them. And I think we found out with Moreau that in some ways you can. Is Moreau possibly a guy that you would look to roster as you get ready to take this and your other playoff teams throughout the championship?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think if you need a tight end, it just depends what your situation is because it looks like Waller might not be out too long. But, for example, my FFPC2, I've got Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert, and Pat Freiermuth, so I don't have room for him. But in my first one, I don't have any good tight ends, so David Njoku starting. So, in that one I'll be going after Moreau just on the chance that he even gives me a week fill-in because he's, like you said, he's probably the top tight end handcuff out there. If Waller's not in the lineup, you feel pretty good about playing him for sure.
Congratulations on that collection of tight ends, by the way. That is fantastic stuff. In that one,
that team,
nice
it's
work.
Still not making the playoffs. It's still not going to make the playoffs. So.
Well, you never know, but certainly you know better than we do as far as how your teams are doing for sure, Matt. Let's move on. Talk about the Baltimore Ravens running back situation. It's kind of cleared up. Baltimore apparently no longer trusts Tyson Williams. They've cut Le'Veon Bell. It's Devontae Freeman and it's Latavius Murray when he's healthy. Do you see either one of these guys separating himself down the stretch to become a solid flex in FFPC leagues, or is this simply a timeshare the rest of the way?
I've got Freeman in 3 of my leagues, and I like him on my bench. If I have to play him, I'm okay with that. I prefer him to Latavius Murray just because he's getting more of the pass down work. Obviously, Blatt's getting none of it. I don't love it. Like I said, I'd rather have him on my bench, which I do. But I think he's probably looking like an RB2 rest of the way. Just how sketchy the RB2 landscape is for me. I really only want to play 2 running backs in every contest. I want to flex wide receivers, so I'm looking to play as few running backs as I possibly can. So a guy like Freeman, he's either going in my RB2 or he's not going in my lineup at all. So I do like Freeman in that range, but I just, like I said, I'm playing as few running backs as I have to.
I almost scratched this last question, but since you said that, I'm going to bring it up. When you go to the waiver wire, and you did this past Wednesday, I'm sure, and perhaps you're not going to tell us too much because you're going to go back there on Sunday, but what I see left is at the wide receiver position, and I see some intriguing guys there. Would you like to share with us just anyone that you think that you did go hard for in this past week's waiver wire, considering that you have any fab budget remaining?
Yeah, I picked up MVS in my prime time. I think a guy that's maybe available a little bit more is Russell Gage. He's got a good matchup this week against Jacksonville. Ridley's out, so I would probably say he was a guy I picked up in a league where I needed to fill in for CeeDee Lamb. So he was probably my favorite wide receiver that was widely available this week. MBS is kind of a guy, boom or bust type thing, and he might not be available as much anyways. But I'd say Gage just off the top of my head. It wasn't really a crazy active fab week for me. I was just kind of tweaking with my kickers and defenses, and I speculated on Taysom Hill in a couple leagues, just looking into the next few weeks. Just one of the leagues I've got Tannehill, who's just been terrible, and the other I've got Russ, who I think is going to be okay, but I just want someone like Hill in case Russ doesn't get it together here. So Taysom Hill I thought was kind of intriguing just based on his upside maybe for weeks 13, 14, 15 if they go to him, which hopefully if he's healthy enough they will soon.
Matt, you brought up Ryan Tannehill, which is going to lead into we have one email for you this week that we're going to ask right now. It's from John in Texas City, Texas. Now, I was faced with Ryan Tannehill being my only quarterback in a Kentucky semifinal this week. And I did not feel great about it at all. In fact, I felt downright terrible. I went out, I had enough money, and I bought successfully Cam Newton off the waiver wire. So I'm feeling a little bit better about that.
Job.
However, thank you, Farrell. I appreciate that. However, A.J. Brown is listed as out, and John in Texas City, Texas wants to know, hey, Matt, is there any value in the Tennessee passing game with Brown now out as well for Week 12? Good luck in football, guys. That is John in Texas City, Texas. Patriots defense is pretty good, as they showed on Thursday night this past week. Matt, can you make a case for Tannehill or any of these Titans receivers this week?
Thanks, John, and I love Texas, first of all. I know Westbrook Eheen, or whatever how you pronounce his last name, is another kind of interesting wide receiver, but I wouldn't play him, and I know he's coming off the 100-yard game. I wouldn't play any of those guys other than Hilliard. That's the only guy I'd feel good about playing. I maybe for future weeks, if A.J. Brown can't get back on the field, maybe Westbrook, that guy is intriguing, but not this week. Not this week.
You know what's so funny about that, too, when you think about it? So A.J. Brown is out with the chest injury. Julio Jones already on injured reserve. Marcus Johnson, who had that really big week, is out for the season. Did he have a ligament injury? I know it's a season ender for him. You mentioned Westbrook Ikini, which I guess is out there. But the fact that Chad Schroeder has Dontrell Hilliard in his flex spot, and the fact that Dontrell Hilliard can catch passes, you got to wonder if they're going to be starting to look in to Dontrell Hilliard for like a double-digit reception week or something insane like that, right? This week, and that might be the only value there. Yeah, I mean, you never know.
I think so.
But certainly the tea leaves are there. If you read them, I think it makes sense for a big week from Hilliard. If Chad Schroeder.
Do I play Dontrell Hilliard over Antonio Gibson?
All right, so that's a good question. So that's and I think we have. I'll be honest with you. Let's do this right now, Farrell. As long as Matt's bringing this up, I'm going to go to the emails right now. We have an email from Sean in Beltsville, Virginia, who I assume is maybe a WFT fan. He's wondering, with J.D. McKissick getting worked in more, would you guys bench him in Week 12 over Melvin Gordon? Happy holidays. That's Sean in Beltsville, Virginia. So this is interesting, okay, because we have a situation where, number one, this guy has J.D. McKissick. He doesn't say if he has Sean doesn't say if he has Antonio Gibson or not. But we have a situation where he's got to decide, look, what am I doing here at running back? Do I go with Melvin Gordon, who has been the 1B, the Javonte Williams 1A, as they take on the Chargers in the Mile High City this week? Or do you go with McKissick, who's been getting worked in more, and he is at home against the Seahawks? Farrell, how do you feel about this, McKissick versus Melvin Gordon, number one?
Oh, Sean, you can rest. Yeah, nobody loves J.D. McKissick more than I do, but you can put Melvin Gordon. That's a real NFL running back. He's probably carried the ball 120, 130 times this year. I know he's got 5 TDs. He's got a lot of catches. And who's he playing, Balky? Who does Denver have this weekend?
Denver has the Chargers, man.
Los Angeles Chargers, little revenge game action there, Balky. There you go. That's where we need to be. We're Melvin Gordon all the way, sure.
Okay, so we are of one mind on that. I would definitely be playing Gordon over McKissick. When it comes to Gibson versus Hilliard, Matt, I can't and I know everything's on the line this week, right? You throw projections and rankings out the window. I can't, and I'm a pretty conservative guy by nature, as an
yes,
FYI.
you are.
I cannot envision myself benching Antonio Gibson in favor of Dontrell Hilliard this week. Farrell, do you agree with me?
I agree with you guys 100%, and I will tell you this, Balky. You two, Chad Schroeder lives in lovely Omaha, Nebraska, but he has timeshare purchases in both of your brains. I tell you, Chad is getting in you guys. And he's visiting for Thanksgiving. He might linger there through the holidays if you guys don't figure out a way to get him back to Omaha. So, just want to throw that out there.
I am going to send him an email and say, listen, man, you've been living rent-free in my head for several years now. I'm going to have to start charging you at some point. And he certainly has the cash to back that up. Farrell, I am fresh out of emails. I do believe we have one final question for Matt, though.
Oh, it's a question. And, we may have already touched on these guys, so you're going to have to dig deep, brother. But I tell you what, who is the stud that is absolutely going to turn into a dud? The Thanksgiving leftover that you don't want this weekend in your lineup. And then we talked about a lot of sleepers. We going deep. I could see them coming out of the Tennessee game. Those are some sleepers we've already talked about. Please go find me another sleeper. I need a sleeper that's going to really hit a home run this weekend, and a guy that you might have drafted early that you really aren't too excited about.
Well, I'll say the guy I drafted early that I'm not too excited to put in, who's never matched his projected points, and that'd be Saquon. I do have him in one league.
Oh yeah.
And I just every week you put him in if he's healthy, but I don't think he's going to reach his projection again. Also, I've got everyone's back on the Brandon Ayuk train. I'm a little leery of that. It's a good matchup this week, so I'm playing him. But if I could sell him where people are projecting him to go right now, I probably would because they've got Debo and Kittle there, and Mitchell will get healthy at some point probably, and they're just a run first team. So I don't know if Ayuk's going to be consistently good going forward, like people seem to think he is based off the couple recently good games. My sleeper I wrote down was Russell Gage. I already mentioned him. I'll throw out Hayden Hurst just because I think there'll be some points scored in that game. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting game to look into, though. Just maybe some periphery players on those offenses with Agnew out of the mix. Somebody's probably going to get some points for Jacksonville going against Atlanta this week, and with Ridley out for Atlanta, same thing. And maybe it's going to be the Zacchaeus fellow there or someone like Hayden Hurst. Actually, I think Hayden Hurst might be out now that I say that. But Russell Gage was the guy I wrote down. But that game might be worth looking at. I think just
We're
for some
sticking with
players.
Russell. Very good.
Noted Russell Wilson fan and the pride of Canada, as well as Veterans Affairs Canada as well. Matt Bredin joining us tonight on the show. Certainly cannot thank you enough, Matt, for making a little time on this holiday weekend for us, just a normal weekend for you up in the Great White North. I do want to wish you the best of luck in the Football Guys Players Championship the rest of the way.
Yes,
You're
sir.
already in the top 10. We'll see what happens with that $500,000 grand prize over the next month and a half, and hopefully the ball bounces your way. Good luck to you this weekend, and thanks for all your insight, man. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again hopefully real soon.
I appreciate it. Great talking to you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Matt.
Happy Thanksgiving indeed. Matt Bredin, ladies and gentlemen, joining us on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. A lot of great insight from him, Farrell.
Yes, sir.
And I think that what's cool about him is, and I know he's done it with baseball, but he has won a 1,000-team national competition for football before. He has won a several thousand competition in baseball before, so he kind of knows what it takes. He knows, and he said, kind of like when he won that online championship several years ago, he's like, I kind of the next couple of years, I kind of realized it was a little fluky. I don't necessarily think it's fluky. I think you put your team in the best possible position to win, and then if the ball bounces your way, hey, you could be cashing a six-figure grand prize.
Sure, and humble and gracious champions are the kind of guys that you want to be around. But you can tell by talking with him, he knows his stuff. He's thrown out now. He's given us Russell Gage. I good friend Brad Taylor, who works WLEX in Lexington, has me on from time to time. He asked me to give him some sleepers. I gave Russell Gage and one other player one weekend, and they both went out and put up zeros, and then Russell Gage put up zeros again. And then somebody called the station and says, Taylor, why are you calling this guy an expert? So I don't know about this Russell Gage, because these donuts that Russell Gage puts up, two, since I recommended him, he'll probably go out and have a big game. Matt's probably right. I think if we got to have a sleeper, we can throw Russell Gage one more opportunity and hope that we don't get a donut from him.
Yeah, and I hope he doesn't this week. I think I might be forced to play him in one league. I have him rostered in probably close to a half dozen leagues. After the Calvin Ridley situation, I went out and I picked him up, when I could for cheap. And it just makes sense, right? That he would be able to put up points. Only Kyle Pitts is the only other real threat on that team to catch passes. Tajay Sharp had that one good week. But Gage is on my roster. He's ready to be deployed, but I'm with you. I just don't get why he's putting up these bagels. He gets the Jacksonville Jaguars in Florida this week. We'll see what happens there. I do want to ask you, and I know we're up against the hour here. We're going to rapid fire with these last several questions here. But I just want to touch on Cole Kmet, Farrell. He gets 11 targets yesterday on Thanksgiving against the Detroit Lions. He turns that into 8 catches for 65 yards. That the 11 targets, that was a career high for Kmet. But you think about the week before, 1 catch, 12 yards. I don't get it. I don't know if he could be an every week start at the flex position in the Footballguys Players Championship. And maybe this is just a layup answer here for you that I'm teeing you up for. Is he just a mix and match, play him when the matchup's good, bench him when the matchup's bad?
Well, you don't know when the matchup is going to be good because he's just quarterback dependent and situational dependent against the defense. So maybe yes, that is the answer to the question. But this guy came in the league at 21 years old. Balky, he's 6'6", 260 pounds. His targets have increased over the last 3 games, as well as Jimmy Graham, who's made a couple nice catches and including a touchdown. The problem with Kmet's the same problem we approached with the Chicago receivers as we talked about them last week. Nobody's scoring the ball. Kmet has yet to find the end zone. You think, my goodness, this is the world's greatest red zone target. He's another baby Gronk. No touchdowns for this player. Next year is your year for Cole Kmet. If he's on your roster, you're going to leave him there. If you have to play him, you might just get a miracle like you did against Detroit.
You never know when you're going to get that. Let's get into another tight end question. This is from Terry in Boise. Not sure if he's friends with former Footballguys Players Champion John Zaleski there, but he writes.
Who isn't?
Yeah, that's a good point. How big is Boise? I mean, that's not a massive metropolitan area, is it?
It's a great place to go. Great place to see college football. I love the boys.
Yeah, what are they? The Broncos, Farrell? Boise State?
Yes, sir. They're the Broncos. They got a blue field. They got a nice stands. They got genuinely cold weather whenever you get there, so it's good.
Yeah, that's my type of place. I'm going to have to get out. Montana. I got to get out for that Montana State rivalry game.
It could
one
happen.
of these years. I've heard good things about that, and I'll just hit up Idaho on the way. Anyway, we'll say hi to Terry when we're out there. He writes, is Austin Hooper a sneaky start this week? My other option is Evan Engram. Yeah, Austin Hooper. So Hooper is at Baltimore this week, and then you're looking at Evan Engram, who I believe is
God, the Eagles.
Eagles at home. Fairly playing Engram or Hooper. I'm leaning towards Hooper.
Whichever way you lean here, you're leaning the wrong way. How did this happen where these players both got on this roster? That can't, I would start the one with the most catches for the year. No, you can't do that. They both got 28 catches. At one point in time, Austin Hooper was a 70-plus receiver. Ingram's out of Ole Miss. Hooper's out of Stanford, and they're both realizing careers that are less than they should be. You know, Hooper made the decision as a free agent to sign with Cleveland, so the fault is all his. It gives meaning to his own mistake by the lake. I don't know who you play in this game. I don't, you know, I might just out of protest leave the tight end spot vacant and get ready. You know, August 26th is when we start live play in the KFFSC in Louisville, and I can't wait for September 8th. That's when we'll be in Las Vegas. So, you know, let's just think about next year, or go to that waiver wire and try to get some Cole Kmet. But I mean, Balky, what would you do? I mean, Evan Ingram is the player. Evan Ingram is the type player that'll get your coaching staff fired. Okay, so you know he's already achieved that, and you know there's just not much we can say about Hooper, who's locked into a situation with at least two other tight ends, one of which Njoku is a better physicality as an athlete, but you know, Brian Mitch, he was starting Njoku somewhere. Hooper has been that offensive scheme and that quarterback. It's just a disaster for both these players.
I would agree with you, Farrell. This is not what we call an ideal situation for fantasy football at all. And I'll just break this down here. We know Jarvis Landry came back to practice yesterday, so it sounds like he's going to play. Donovan Peoples-Jones gets in a couple of limited practice. It sounds like he's going to play. What I do know, neither one of these guys sounds like they're fully healthy at all, which to me would suggest that you're going to lean on Austin Hooper more in order to matriculate the ball down the field. Hashtag Hank Stram on that. But then you look at the Giants. Sterling Shepard probably not going to play. Kadarius Toney probably not going to play. It's sort of like Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay, and Evan Ingram, and that's it. I just feel like with more of the targets going to Austin Hooper over the last couple of weeks, I have a slight lean to Hooper over Evan Ingram there. That's the way I fall in on it. We already answered Sean in Beltsville, Virginia's question. Let's go to Mark and Pace in Utah. Dear Farrell and Balky, normally I've been rolling with Carson Wentz, but is Taylor Heineke's matchup too good to pass up this week? All right, so you look at Taylor Heineke this week, Farrell. He actually gets to go against the Seattle Seahawks at home, and then Carson Wentz this week, and I'll interject this real quick. Have you been watching the new Hard Knocks, in-season Hard Knocks with the Colts on HBO?
You know, Robbie Fetcher swears by it and is begging me to, and I've got to get to it.
I just watched episode 2 right before the show started tonight. It's good stuff. Good stuff on Jonathan Taylor, Darius Leonard, Carson Wentz. Good stuff on Frank Wright. We saw a Steve Tasker and Bruce Smith appearance this past week. That was pretty cool. So I'm liking it. I think it's really good. In any event, Carson Wentz at home against the Buccaneers or Taylor Heineke at home against the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, Bucky, this was easy when we start looking at what it's going to take to be in the game. First of all, Heineke's got the matchup. That's what you're talking about. But he doesn't have to look for a lot of ways to beat Seattle. Seattle, the way things are going right now, just may self-destruct and defeat themselves. But this is a real step-up opportunity for Carson Wentz. This is a situation where he's going to have to match. He's going to have to match the GOAT. Brady's going to put points on the board, and Indy has got to answer. I really like the challenge that is being presented against the Bucs secondary. So Carson Wentz is an easy choice. This shouldn't even be a contest in who you're going to start. Heineke's got the opportunity to put together a good game, but Carson Wentz is challenged to step up and have a game of his life, and then that's what you want to do. You want to swing for the fences. You'll want to do it with Carson Wentz this week. Yeah,
and I think I would lean that way as well.
Bucky, we don't want you leaning. We want you jumping off the high dive into the Carson Wentz pool.
All right,
you got to really get in there. You got to get your head wet. You got to do it, baby, do it.
If it comes with between dipping my toes in the Wentz pool or diving head first into the Wentz pool, I am definitely diving head first. I'm much closer to that end of the spectrum than dipping my toes in for sure. All right, final email we have tonight after we get that image out of our minds. It's Josh in Boston. Which Rams receiver should I go with this weekend against the Pack? Odell Beckham or Van Jefferson? Josh and Boston, thank you so much. This has been an interesting conversation I've had on the airwaves this week in Northeast Wisconsin as the Packers get ready to face the Rams. I'm not so sure we can write off Van Jefferson yet as far as fantasy goes here, even after the bye week. Odell Beckham getting the chance to sort of get more in tune with the playbook, get ready. Van Jefferson's had a lot longer time to develop chemistry with Matthew Stafford than Odell Beckham, and I still think he might be an interesting play this week. Well, number one, it's Cooper Kupp, right? Because Cooper Kupp, Kevin King's doubtful for this game. I think Cooper Kupp is going to run circles around Eric Stokes. But when it comes to the next guy, I think it still might be Jefferson over Beckham this week. Farrell, how do you see this?
No, you're 100% right, Barkey. 7 targets in the last 3 games for Jefferson. He's hauled in 3 or 4 catches. He's playing the role. He stepped up into the Woods opportunity. He's far from the player Woods is. Nobody wants to talk about wide receiver blocking, but it does a lot of things for all of these Rams, what Woods did on the field. He's gone. Jefferson's stepping up. There's a lot of big responsibilities. Beckham has no responsibilities other than to get open Beckham. And there'll be a few plays that there could be like that. You saw Diggs score the touchdown this weekend when he turned the corner inside out one-on-one. There could be a Beckham opportunity that way, and that's what he brings to this team. But Jefferson this offense is built around a receiver like Woods, receiver like Jefferson. Jefferson's got all the reason to step up, and the team wants him to. Jefferson is your guy that's going to be targeted, and I, too, expect him to have a big game. Doesn't mean Beckham can't have one, but, Beckham's every game that Beckham plays, he gets a little bit closer to filing for his severance, which is now $30,000 per league season, by the way.
Oh, boy. That's a good definitely something to keep in mind as well there, Farrell. Bringing the real, as you always do. I certainly appreciate everything you brought to the table tonight. This was good stuff. I know you had a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, sir.
Based on what you told me tonight. We will do this again next Friday as we kick off that venerable month of December where champions are made and forged and live forever. And that is what we will be talking about. We have another great guest coming up next Friday as well, man. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend, and we'll talk again soon. Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, hanging out with us tonight. And check out the KFFSC at kffsc.com, as well as following him on Twitter at jfarrellelliott and the KFFSC on Twitter at KFFSC. I want to thank Farrell Elliott. I want to thank Matt Bredin for hopping aboard the 9th place team in the Footballguys Players Championship. I want to thank the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you to wake up, have a cup of coffee, get out of that turkey coma, food coma, Thanksgiving coma, unless you're Canadian like Matt Bredin, where it was just a normal weekend for him, and tuning in tonight live. It was a pleasure doing this show for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I want to remind you to listen to the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with Craig Bodemiller. That's rotoviz.com/podcast or wherever you get your podcasts as well. Good stuff from Craig, good redraft conversation, and then, like I said at the top of the show, good, refreshing dynasty conversation as well. We'll be back next Friday, 10/9 Central. We will have the 11th place team owner in the Footballguys Players Championship, the one, the only, Mark Fisher, will hop aboard these airwaves. Your holiday weekend continues now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Hey, one thing I didn't bring up last week as we led into Thanksgiving, I don't want to make a big deal out of this because literally every other radio show and podcast is making a big deal out of this, sometimes spending 15, 20, 25 minutes thanking everybody. We're not going to do that tonight, but I do want to shout out a heartfelt thank you to all the people that make this show possible. I already gave thanks to a lot of the people already. But the biggest people in this show is not possible without each and every one of you streaming, downloading, hopping in the chat, sending questions, making the show relevant in the high-stakes space. We were one of the first high-stakes podcasts out there. Not the first, but one of the first, and we continue, keeping on, 10 years in and showcasing the best and the brightest high-stakes fantasy football players on this program each and every week, and I really appreciate all the support. You guys are awesome, you guys and you women, everybody out there. It's just been tremendous. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the continued support. And I hope the ball bounces your way this weekend and you make your way up those leaderboards. Hopefully it's a great holiday weekend for fantasy and for your lives in general. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you again next Friday.